Elections are often painted with a very broad brush, aren't they? We hear about national waves, big personalities, and sweeping mandates. But the real stories, the real politics, they happen on the ground, in the soil of a single constituency. Today, we're going to conduct a deep forensic analysis of one such place, Dimapur I in Nagaland. Our purpose here isn't to predict a winner or take sides. It's to understand a system. By looking closely at the data, listening to the grievances, and dissecting the strategies at play, we can see how the political heart of this one community tells a much, much larger story about governance and about the true power of a voter's choice.
And our focus is right here. This is the commercial lifeblood of Nagaland. Dimapur is the state's economic gateway, its primary artery connecting it to the rest of the country. So you have to understand, the political battles fought on this urban landscape are incredibly intense. This is not just about local control. This is a bellwether for the entire state's political and economic future. What happens in the markets and neighborhoods of Dimapur sends ripples far beyond its own borders.
So, here's our roadmap for this analysis. First, we'll get a feel for the electoral character of Dimapur. Then, and this is crucial, we will listen to the deep grievances of its people. After that, we'll dissect the current power structure. From there, we'll examine a detailed four-pillar blueprint designed for a challenger. And finally, we'll look at the concrete steps needed to rebuild that most precious political commodity, trust.
All right, let's begin by understanding the unique identity of this constituency. Dimapur I isn't just an urban center, it's a fiercely contested electoral battleground, and it has a long, volatile history of shifting allegiances. That's precisely what makes it such a fascinating and important case study.
Now, the very first piece of data you need to grasp is voter engagement. The turnout here consistently hovers around an incredible 80%. Just think about that for a moment. This is not an apathetic or disconnected electorate. It is highly active, highly engaged. And their loyalty? It is absolutely not guaranteed. Power has swung back and forth like a pendulum between major national parties, the Indian National Congress, the BJP, and very strong regional forces. This is what a truly competitive political space looks like.
And this table, well, it tells the story of that volatility over 30 years. Just follow the pattern with me. In '93, an independent wins. Then a swing to the Congress. A few years later, BJP. Then it swings back to Congress. And then in 2013, the regional Naga People's Front, or NPF, a powerful local force takes hold. This constant churn, this back and forth, it reveals an electorate that is willing, even eager to make changes when it feels a change is necessary. But look closely at what starts to happen from 2018 onwards. A new pattern begins to emerge from the noise.
And that brings us to the present day. You see, the 2023 result wasn't just another victory. It was a powerful consolidation of power. The incumbent, representing the BJP, secured a commanding 67% of the vote. That volatility we just saw, that constant churn over decades, seems to have suddenly stabilized into a very significant mandate. So this raises the two most important questions we need to answer. Why did this happen? And does this huge number actually reflect genuine voter satisfaction?
To answer those questions, we have to look beneath the surface of the election results. Because despite this decisive victory on paper, there is a strong, powerful undercurrent of voter discontent flowing through the constituency. To really understand the politics here, we have to explore the real-world, everyday issues that are fueling frustration for the people of Dimapur I.
This quote from the source material is direct. It's unambiguous. Let's be very clear about what it says. The core issue here isn't some complex ideology or grand national debate. It's about tangible, day-to-day failures in local governance. This single sentiment is the most critical variable that any political strategy, for any party in Dimapur I, must address head-on.
And these failures, they aren't abstract concepts. We're talking about a sanitation crisis with garbage literally piling up in the streets. A major railway line, a promise of development and connectivity, stalled for more than a decade. Simmering social tensions over job reservations that have been left unaddressed. And the absolute basics, recurring floods in a commercial hub, and shortages of clean, safe drinking water. These aren't just policy issues. They represent profound failures of the civic contract. This is about the basic dignity promised to every citizen, and it's about the fundamental right to have one's voice heard through informed public speech, a speech that must be grounded in these everyday realities.
So here's the puzzle. If these grievances are so deep, so real, then how on earth do we explain the incumbent's dominant two-thirds majority victory? To understand that, we need to move from the sentiment of the people to the structure of the contest. We need to dissect the anatomy of the political power that currently defines Dimapur I.
This chart right here clearly illustrates the pivot point.
Follow the journey of the individual. In 2013, the current member of the Legislative Assembly wins under the banner of the regional NPF. He gets a solid 43% of the vote. But then, a crucial shift happens. He switches to the BJP, and watch what happens to his vote share. It jumps, dramatically, to over 63% in 2018, and then it climbs even higher, to 67% in 2023. This data strongly suggests we're looking at a personality who carried a very significant, very loyal vote base with him into a new and more powerful political alliance.
And that alliance is absolutely key. In one corner, you have the incumbent coalition of the NDPP and the BJP. Think of them as the heavyweight. They have a significant resource advantage, the influence of the national government, and the ability to promise large-scale, headline-grabbing projects. And in the other corner, you have the challenger, the NPF. They have deep regional roots, a strong historical presence, a claim to the local identity. But the source indicates that right now they're facing some serious organizational challenges.
So this brings us to the immense power of the individual candidate in this specific context. The MLA's defection wasn't just some minor political event. It fundamentally reshaped the entire political landscape of the constituency. The numbers strongly suggest that for a large part of the electorate, loyalty was tied more to the person than to the party brand. When he switched parties, his votes moved with him. It's a classic demonstration that sometimes the messenger can be just as decisive as the message.
Okay, so let's take stock. We have a powerful incumbent, a deeply frustrated populace, and a challenging environment for the opposition. Given this context, what is a viable path forward for a challenger? You can't just do the same old things. The source document proposes a comprehensive, detailed strategy, a 4-pillar blueprint designed specifically to reclaim the narrative and present a credible, alternative vision for governance.
The strategy is named the Chaturmukha Doctrine. It's a Sanskrit term, meaning four-faced. And the core principle is simple but powerful. Shift the entire terms of the debate. Instead of trying to compete on the incumbent's ground, of grand promises and national influence, it seeks to reframe the election completely. It's about bringing the contest back home, making it about local accountability, tangible quality of life issues, and a sense of social fairness for everyone.
Let's break down these 4 pillars. First, governance. This is about creating a sharp contrast. We are from this soil, for this soil. Our commitment is to Nagaland first. Second, infrastructure. The strategy here is to relentlessly, consistently highlight the tangible failures. The stalled railway, the uncollected garbage, the recurring floods. Every one of them becomes a reason to vote for change. It turns the election into a referendum on actual delivery. The third pillar is social equity. This means you don't run from the tough conversations about job quotas. You engage them directly, advocating for a fair and inclusive review. And finally, an intense urban focus. This means speaking the language of the city, addressing specific anxieties like market safety, traffic, or youth unemployment.
But of course, a blueprint on paper is just that, paper. The real test, the real challenge is execution. How does this high-level strategy actually translate into concrete, on-the-ground actions? This is the essential bridge that connects theory to practice, and it is the absolute key to rebuilding voter trust one person at a time.
The action plan is refreshingly direct. It begins with a tangible promise. Launch a Clean and Connect initiative to visibly tackle the sanitation crisis. Show, don't just tell. Next, it calls for using the real stories of voters in all messaging to build a genuine, empathetic connection. Crucially, it stresses selecting a very specific kind of candidate. It calls for building smart alliances to consolidate the anti-incumbent vote so you're not splitting the opposition. And it calls for a return to the fundamentals, intensive, door-to-door campaigning that is focused on listening to grievances. And when you do this, when you engage people one-on-one and listen to their stories, you must do so with the utmost respect for their personal information and their consent, aligning with the core principles of data privacy.
And this slide perfectly captures the strategic thinking on candidate selection. The recommendation isn't for a conventional, larger-than-life politician. It's for a very distinct archetype, a local professional, maybe a technocrat, an engineer, or a respected community leader, someone in their mid-career. They need to have an unimpeachable, clean reputation, a genuine, visible connection to the grassroots, and most importantly, a credible, well-articulated vision for urban renewal. The goal is to project competence and trustworthiness, offering a clear contrast to politics as usual. You know, this entire case study, everything we've looked at, it all boils down to one fundamental question of politics. And it's a question that extends far beyond Dimapur. When you are faced with uncollected garbage on your street, day after day, or when a promised railway that could change your family's future never materializes, what truly sways your vote? Is it the grand vision of national projects and powerful alliances? Or is it the persistent, quiet demand for simple, local accountability? This is the central tension a challenger must navigate, and it is the choice that the voters of Dimapur I will ultimately make. If you want to become a people-centric leader and uplift your constituency, get in touch with blueprintstrategies.ai at mgr@blueprintstrategies.ai or call 080-4204-1602. Purpose beyond politics.